Hello, welcome to Sound and Fury Book Reviews. As usual, I'm Tina. Today I'm doing a book review of Grave Empire by Richard Swan. This is a book from Orbit. It's a fantasy. It comes out February 4th, 2025. As you can tell, I received this wonderful physical copy from the publisher in exchange for a fair review. Thank you so much, Orbit. It was like the best Christmas present I ever got. Aside from the 12-foot skeleton that my husband bought me this year. I mean, that tops it a little bit. A sprawling fantasy with 3 converging plot lines, great characters, and compelling world build. Grave Empire should definitely be on your list if you're a fan of darker fantasy. I couldn't put it down, and it's huge. Like, it's big. And I don't read a lot of chonky books, but I flew through this. So, what is it about? Blood once turned the wheels of empire. Now it is money. A new age of exploration and innovation has dawned, and the Empire of the Wolf stands to take its place as the foremost power in the known world. Glory and riches await. But dark days are coming. A mysterious plague has broken out in the pagan kingdoms to the north, while in the south the Empire's proxy war in the lands of the Wolfmen is weeks away from total collapse. Worse still is the message brought to the Empress by 2 heretic monks who claim to have lost contact with the spirits of the afterlife. The monks believe this is the start of an ancient prophecy heralding the end of days, the Great Silence. It falls to Renetta Rayner, a low-ranking ambassador to an enigmatic and vicious race of mermen, to seek answers from those who still practice the arcane arts. But with the road south beset by war and the Empire on the brink of supernatural catastrophe, soon there may not be a world left to save. So this novel is set in the same world as The Justice of Kings, but 200 years later. As such, you really don't need to have read that series, though really you should, it's great, to understand what is going on in this book. There are subtle references here and there to that series, but it's nothing that would make you confused or cause you to think you've missed something. I kind of compare it to Stephen King's meta illusions. It's always a little fun Easter egg for those who have read it, but you don't really need it to kind of understand and enjoy the story. So, just to get that out of the way. Getting into it, the novel follows 3 plot lines, as I said. Renata, the ambassador to the Mer people, the Stygian, they're called, who is traveling with some others to ask the Stygian for help with the Dark Prophecy. There's Peter, a soldier sent to the far end of the Empire who really has a terrible, terrible time. And Van Oldenburg, this middle-aged senator rich dude who is obsessed with arcane artifacts and pretty much stumbles into and takes advantage of a very strange turn of events. It's hard to say which of the 3 was more interesting. With Renata, it's a bit of a political fantasy with a quest narrative as they're traveling around here and there, and there's a small group of characters, there's a minor love story, which I enjoyed, and some interesting places that they stop in. With Peter, it's almost a horror survival fantasy, as when he gets to the fort he's sent to be a captain of, a lot of weird shit happens, and all of it is creepy and rather grotesque at times. And then we have Von Oldenburg, who is a character I should have hated, but damn it, he was incredibly interesting, almost as interesting as he was unlikable, but that's the kind of thing about him that made him so interesting. He's this total self-serving sociopath who has an immensely complex characterization. He's a huge asshole who, when he is tempted by darkness, doesn't just jump in, but dives head first. Yet he also has twinges of guilt, and he truly seems to care about his mistress Helena, albeit in a weird way. He's a great character because what you feel about him is layered, and as much as I was like, ew, I hate this guy, I also just couldn't. I think he was my favorite perspective to read about. He was just so interesting, and he was also kind of funny. He was a great kind of villain. There's another character I really liked at the start that has a huge character twist at one point that made me really sad because I really liked that character for most of the book. Yet the twist thing made sense for their character, which was what made it more sad, and I thought that was really, really well done. Renata was fine. I didn't love her, but she was likable, as was Peter. I liked Peter, I didn't love Peter. And while I was super interested in their perspectives as well, their plot lines, I can't say that they're my favorite characters. Van Oldenburg was obviously my favorite character. Moving on to the writing itself, it's crisp and snappy and moves at a great pace. There's a fine balance in the novel between backstory, taking its time in the telling, and moving things along. The 3 storylines help with that as well, as all 3 were compelling and weighted equally in the story. I always wanted to get back to each individual story, but I never felt like the other was kind of stealing it. Sometimes when you're reading a book with multiple perspectives, you get to one and you're like, oh, I don't care about this person, and you kind of read it fast. But all 3 of them, once I was in it, I was super engaged. The battle scenes are visceral and bloody and gory and fun. Swan doesn't shy away from the grosser aspects of human bodies, but it also doesn't reach like body horror levels. It's definitely gorier and on the darker side of fantasy though. So if you're squeamish, I don't know if you would like this as much, but I thought I was fine with it. The plot is interesting because the three stories you know are interconnected, but you're trying to find out how and why. There's a mix of us knowing what's going on and the characters in 2/3 of the story not knowing, which shifted once in a while. So like for sometimes Van Oldenburg would not know something that we know that the other characters know, but then Renato would not know something that he knows. It was a great kind of way that those things flowed together. I wouldn't say there are any major plot twists in the novel, but the story has a simple objective with a large structure underneath, kind of like an iceberg. And we all know what happened with the Titanic. Speaking of the Titanic, if you like poetry, you should check out The Convergence of the Twain by Thomas Hardy. Yes, this Tom Hardy, not this Tom Hardy. The idea of opulence and wealth being taken down by natural forces fits really well with this novel too. And I guess it's kind of a theme of our times, I suppose. Like you can't read the back of this novel and not think that it's probably talking about something in particular. Perhaps a particular country, or maybe a bunch of countries. I mean, we all know that, we're killing ourselves. But anyway, I'm rambling again, but honestly, great books make me ramble and think of other books, and excellent books make me think of poetry. And this book kind of did. The world building is great. I kind of mentioned it earlier when I was talking about the references to the Justice of Kings, but the world Swan has created is rich and interesting. In this one, they have moved from like the tail end of medieval to like musket level firearms, a sort of blend of colonial UK, Civil War US, and mythical fantasy, as there are wolf people and mer people and some other kind of people and gods and magic and a hell realm, as well as science and ships and carriages. It's very fun. It's fun too if you read the other trilogy because you can see how things have progressed socially, economically, and culturally from 200 years. So that was really neat. There's also a thing, I'm assuming he invented it, called selectomancy, which is the power to control sharks. I thought that was great. There's some kind of fun things in this book too. Like it's not just like a doom and gloom book, despite the prophecy of the world's gonna end. It's very fun and it's very entertaining, and there's some great like kind of comedy in it as well. There is one thing, if I could provide one bit of critique, and it's probably not even critique, it's just kind of like how the society was organized, but for a non-sexist society, which this book exists within, the use of androcentric language like wolfmen versus like wolf people was kind of distracting to me. And like there's women soldiers, but they're always referring to the soldiers as men, and I was just like, why? Like, I guess we still do that today in the army. They'll be like, oh, do they though? I don't know. I'm not in the army. Like, do they still say the men go through the breach? Like, I don't know. Anyway, I just found that kind of like, I was kind of like, do we need that? But I mean, that's honestly a minor thing. It wasn't a big deal. I still really loved this book. So read this book if you enjoy fantasy epics, rich world building, and an utterly appalling character that you will love reading about. So thank you again to Orbit for the coffee. I really like it. Thank you so much. It's going on my shelf. It has water damage, but that's okay. That's fine. So thank you. Okay, bye.